Welcome back to the Thoughtful Advocate. So today's episode is centered around perfectionism and people pleasing. I think they go hand in hand. Specific as survival strategies, which I've used most of my life. I'm learning these strategies because they're not healthy. And if you speak to your therapist, they'll also tell you it's unhealthy and hopefully give you some better coping mechanisms so that you can cope with your own traumas. So I recommend speaking to a therapist first. Now, this video is to give you insight on my personal experience and my story, and hopefully people can relate and see that they're not alone. If you've ever spent hours on something that really shouldn't take hours just because you want it to be perfect, which nothing is, and if you ever had that sick stomach and you're feeling that you're going to disappoint someone, whether that be your family member, your friends, even strangers, maybe your boss, this is for you. Now, these survival strategies, trauma responses that kept you alive as a child. If you have one, you're most likely gonna have both of these. Trust me, they're probably suffocating you as an adult. This is my own personal story. I've been through therapy and read some studies on this and did some research before coming up with this video. But as always, feel free to do your own research and definitely get your own therapist. So I'll share some research that might help you understand why you're going through this. There are some personal stories that might feel like you're opening up your own diary and reading directly from it. The practical tools that changed my life personally. And if you're listening to this, I feel you and see you. You're probably exhausted from trying to be perfect all the time. I was at that point too, where every day I would wake up like a heavy weight on my shoulder. It's just tiring being fake. That's just how it is. And by the end, you'll understand why your brain learn these patterns and how to heal from them. Okay, so what is perfectionism? I feel like most of us know, but what are the indicators? Are you someone who spends way too much time editing, combing through, and refining detail for whether that's your essay, your homework, your resume? Maybe you're even a type A person who plans your trips. Maybe you're making a video, a slideshow, a presentation, and it's eating up all your time because you're looking for every error possible. And do you ever ask yourself, am I good enough? Does fear of making one mistake paralyze you from even starting a project that you want to do? Maybe a passion project that you've always wanted to do and just can't because you feel like you're going to fail. You want it to be perfect. And let me tell you, nothing is. Do you ever feel like a complete failure? Do you take criticism as a personal attack on your self-worth? I know I did, and this was very tough for me during my career. Are you constantly comparing yourself between highlight reels of other people's feed versus yours and what they're doing in their life and why you're so behind? And this is a big one. Do you have impossible standards for yourself and normal standards for other people, or sometimes barely any standards? The bar is very low for other people, but for you, up in the sky, because it's all or nothing. Okay, so this question gets asked a lot. Am I a people pleaser? If you are one, you've probably typed this into Google yourself. I know I have. So here are the indicators. Do you find yourself saying yes when your whole body is screaming no? That you want to please someone else, but you just can't find the courage to say no. Do you feel responsible for managing someone else's emotions? Whether that's your parents, your siblings, your friends, people around you, your boss. And do you apologize constantly for something that's not even your fault? I still do this. I'll bump into someone at the grocery. People often bump into me and then I'll say I'm sorry even though it wasn't my fault. So I'm still working on it. This is a big one for me. I've done this for a long time, is suppressing my own needs. Have you ever suppressed your own needs, opinions, and boundaries to avoid disappointing other people? Do you feel guilty when you rest? Struggle to ask for help because you don't want to feel like a burden to anyone? Are you constantly reading the room, hyper aware of everyone else's emotions? Do you lose yourself in relationships? Become who you think other people want you to be? Do you avoid conflict at all costs, even if it's sacrificing your own truth? And often everyone comes to you for advice for their own problems, and you rarely share your problems with them. If you're nodding to both of these lists, then you're likely a people pleaser and a perfectionist. And that's okay. That's why I made this video, because I've lived through being both and I'm still going through it. So let's just get through this together. Okay, so I'm going to read some psychological facts for you. These are from studies done. The 2018 psychological report study, childhood trauma is directly linked to anxiety-driven perfectionism, and I can attest to that. I have a lot of childhood trauma. And yeah, I do have a lot of anxiety and perfectionism. Research also shows that perfectionism often stems from inner shame. It's the fawn response where individuals seek safety by merging with the wishes, needs, and demands of others. Dr. Pete Walker, who wrote the Complex PTSD book, often describes fawning as a trauma response where people develop people-pleasing behaviors to avoid conflict, pacify their abusers, and create a sense of safety. Studies show fawn responses are literally how we instinctively react to perceived threats and challenges. The truth is, both perfectionism and people-pleasing develop in conditional love environments. If you do this thing to please your parents, that's when they show that they love you. And if you don't, you might just get ignored. That could be one example. But this is conditional love, where you have to do certain things, like be a good student, do all your chores correctly, and be a good child. Otherwise, you just don't feel loved, or you just don't see that from your parents. And this is all dependent on your performance. So your nervous system learned that a perfect performance in front of everyone means that everyone's happy. And that's your survival mode, your survival response. So these studies also show that the fawn response develops because the nervous system. So the common thinking when you have perfectionism is that if I'm flawless, no one can reject me. And the people-pleasing thinking is, if everyone's happy, no one will ever abandon me. And that's very wrong. Together they create the perfect people pleaser, exhausting yourself while being flawless, while keeping everyone else comfortable. This is my personal story, and you may or may not relate to it. But I grew up in a Chinese household where my parents grew up in a lot of fear, abandonment, violence, and because they grew up in this environment, and also they grew up in a lot of scarcity. So not having a lot of money and really learning how to be independent in a completely different and new country. So that is a challenge in itself. It's important to understand where it all comes from, because generational trauma is very real. So I think with a lot of Asians, there's this mentality to have face in front of other people, never talk badly in front of them, never seem less than perfect, always smiling, never showing weaknesses, whether that's emotions, like crying or like hysterically laughing, just being very level-minded. And there's no room for mistakes or needs, and we're very good at hiding our emotions. And in Asian culture, individual needs, emotions, authentic self never really mattered, because it's the family image that comes on top above all these things. So your reputation of your family depends on how you act. And if you act out of line, you're gonna receive a lot of, could be punishment, be ignored, and they can often lead to issues of having perfectionism and people-pleasing tendencies. Here are some perfectionism training that I've been put through, and it was normal through my own family, my parents, their parents, so my grandma too, and they went through the same thing, so why change it? They weren't allowed to talk back. I wasn't either, because if I ever dared to talk back, I would be hit. I wouldn't even dare to talk back at this point, because it's just too much. I was very fearful of my father. You were always expected to help other people before your own needs. I would always fetch water for my dad and get whatever he needs. As soon as I come home, basically, chopping vegetables, helping prepare dinner, I always put my family above my own needs, and I became very good at it until it started really affecting me. And if I cried, it would make my dad very angry. I was more likely to get hit. In general, with my family, if you're seen crying, you're just told to go wash your face. There's no, oh, are you okay? So coping with emotions was very hard. The message for me as a child, which later became a message as an adult, was that making mistakes is dangerous. Like, I'm either gonna get hit or punished, or something bad is gonna happen to me if I make one mistake. It wasn't just to the physical violence, it was also the emotional withdrawal. We never talked about feelings, how scared I was of my father, and all the trauma I went through. My brother also went through something very similar. When we didn't perform to our family standards, the love disappeared. Parents could get really cold and just end up ignoring you, which was tough as a child because you need that emotional support. Especially in those teenage years, a lot of this was reinforced when I saw my dad throw my baby brother on the couch just because he was crying. I thought, if I start crying, what's gonna happen to me? He's just a baby. That was it, and I shut it all down. If I have any emotions, it's gonna be bottled up and haunt me much later. No emotions, no voice, no softness. And yeah, if my dad ever came home stressed from work, or he was just upset, which he always was, he had real anger management issues. My mind immediately shifted to fix-it mode. What can I do to make him happier? Whether that's doing chores or doing all my chores without being asked, doing my homework, going into my room, shutting myself from the world, and just immerse myself in my studies, because what else is there to do when you're trying to escape from someone who's very scary and abusive? I learned to read micro-expressions, voice tones, body language. I basically became a human emotional barometer. And my own safety depended on everyone else's emotions being regulated. I thought as a child that it was my job to regulate everyone's emotions and keep them happy. It was definitely not. I sacrificed my own comfort so that they could be comfortable, and that really hurt me down the road. Most of my academic career, from preschool to middle school, I don't think I had perfect grades. I think they were like okay. I did my best, but it wasn't until high school where I really wanted straight A's, 100% on everything. I really wanted to please my dad because he was never there. He wouldn't show up to any of my school. If we had the choir or performance, he would never be there. It was always my mom who came through for that, luckily. So it just seemed like he was never there. So I wanted some emotional validation or some kind of support from him. So it was very important. And also to prove him wrong that I'm stupid and an idiot, which he would call me every single day and remind me multiple times a day, which was really a reflection of what he thought of himself, which is really sad. I remember in middle school, even though my grades weren't perfect, I still got sick during standardized testing because I wanted them to be perfect. I could never wrap my head around those worded math questions because math was always like in equations, and once it became words, it became a lot harder for me. I'm someone who visualizes things a lot easier than just reading them or hearing it. And yeah, I think the breaking point was in middle school. I basically almost failed my math class. That was really disappointing for my family. In high school, I tried really hard. I was just studying all the time. And I did become valedictorian, which is really cool. But I was doing it for other people. I was doing it to please other people, especially my father. It wasn't really for myself, and that was hard. And again, that validation of not being stupid and proving my father wrong. I proved to myself that I could do it, so I'll take that away. And yeah, I remember showing him my report card of straight A's, and I think he just looked at me and said, good. I'm sure he was secretly proud of me, but I really needed that. So when that's all I got, I was very disappointed. That moment taught me that no amount of perfection was ever going to be good enough for him. And yeah, this one's hard. No amount of achievement would ever fill that hole of conditional love that was created, which I feel ties into my want for validation on social media, like the likes and the shares. I definitely wanted to be validated because I didn't get it from my parents. My mom was proud of me, which I appreciate, but my dad wasn't, so that was difficult for me as a child. I'm gonna have to bleep this out. I don't know another word for it, but basically where I tried to myself. That was like right after high school, where my foundation of very close friends I had, I call them my crew, amazing teachers I had there who were very supportive of me academically and just at school overall. I felt like I was losing everything, and with my grandma not being there, being my emotional support, I was crumbling. Even though I did get a full scholarship to University of Washington, it's one of the best schools in the world, I did not want to go there because all my friends were going to Western. That's where my support group was, so I fell into a very deep depression, and all of that emotion that was suppressed finally came out and exploded. And yeah, that perfectionism and people pleasing, like, it got me success, quote unquote success, however you define that. For Asians, it's getting good grades and usually like a good job as a doctor, lawyer, engineer. But it felt hollow and isolating because I wasn't doing it for myself, and I was in a way betraying my own like needs and wants and dreams. And again, that pattern never left as an adult. It got more complicated. I was building my brand, Zero Waste Cutie, on Instagram. That was my previous name, and I always felt like I couldn't share a lot of things because I was never perfect at being zero waste. I just felt I was gonna hide this from people because if I ever created waste, which I did, I thought I had to be perfect. And I also put this podcast on the slide table. I kept putting it off because I was like, John's not gonna edit for me. I thought I really need John and his voice and his ideas. John's taking care of my son Ace right now. I'm very grateful. I have great ideas and I can edit too. Putting that perfectionism aside and just trying our best, and it works. And I think especially as a mother, like these patterns go into overdrive. And motherhood really just spotlight everything in your routine, your mental health that really needs to be worked on. So it really highlights the issues and the flaws and all of that. Yeah, motherhood is a spotlight in every unhealed pattern. And yeah, even though you probably can't really see it, in order to combat my own perfectionism, I did not shave my legs. I have a band-aid. Usually I would take this off because I want to seem like perfect. But and it's not just trying to be perfect yourself, it's trying to be the perfect mother. And I've always wanted to be a good mom. Every parent wants to be a good parent, of course. But there is a point where standards become impossible and you can't do everything yourself. So this could be like being nurturing but not, or being present but not, smothering, working but not absent. So it's truly balanced, but I think with parenthood, nothing's perfect and you just have to accept that. And that's just reality with everything else. And yeah, this is also another issue I found with my perfectionism, especially when it comes to buying things, like car seats, for example. I read that you want to buy new because the belt can get worn and that's a safety issue. So I'm like, which one's the safest? Luckily, I had my mother-in-law to help me with that. She actually helped with a lot of stuff we got for the baby, so I'm very thankful for that because of her, that helped lessen my mental load. Because when you're, like study showed, when you're making too many decisions in a day, it just drains you. And so the less decisions you have to make, the better. The more clear-minded you are, and that was very helpful. But when it came to other items, like what kind of diapers to use, the crib, all these other items like bottles, I asked for the bottle sampler so I can try different nipples and stuff. Luckily he took to most of them. But yeah, I usually spend a lot of time researching what I'm about to buy, which I think it can be a good thing because you want to make the right choice when it comes to being sustainable too, something that lasts long and is a good quality product. But there's a point where you can't control everything. Yeah, looking into the perfect feeding schedule, which with every baby it's quite different. They'll let you know when they need to eat. You do keep them more of a rigid schedule because they need to be fed like every 2 hours and they have a tiny the size of a cherry. And there's just so many choices as a parent. Do they sleep with you in your room or in the other room? Do you get a bassinet versus just keeping the crib and all these other gadgets? There's 50 million baby gadgets out there and they really gave me a headache in the beginning because I was like, there's so many out there and I don't know what I need and don't need. So maybe I'll make a video on what I actually use. I just felt like every choice I make could make or break his future. There is some truth to that, but not to the point where it's like, which baby tub are you choosing? As long as it holds water and holds him safely, we are gonna be fine. Especially when it comes to parents who have past trauma from their own parents. If they were violent and mean to you and emotionally unavailable, you want to be warm and loving and kind and just the opposite of what they're doing. Yeah, it could lead to this perfectionism of being the opposite of everything they are. But of course, you have to take the good of what they did too. You definitely don't. If you've been through a traumatic childhood, you don't want to repeat everything. So it does take a lot of therapy and research and understanding of what kind of parent you want to be. And when you become a mother, you just don't have time for other people's bullshit, or that's pleasing other people. You just don't care anymore. There's a study that shows your brain cancels out other people's opinions because your brain can only take so much. People's opinions become less and less important to you, which I think is a good thing, especially for me, because people's opinions used to mean the world to me. It would dictate whether I go out or stay at home or make certain choices. I would always listen to my parents no matter what. And John found that very weird because he would not. So I appreciate that perspective. Of course, there's a balance in that. You're gonna hear a million opinions from a million people, your parents, your partner, in-laws, pediatricians, which you should listen to for the most part. Other moms, society, people at restaurants, if your baby's crying, they're gonna be giving you advice. I found that really annoying because I was like, that's not what he needs right now. Yeah, you'll hear a million opinions, but honestly, in the end, you just have to listen to your gut. Ace had a lot of stomach issues, so his stomach would get really hard, and he couldn't like his stomach would just hurt. We had to go through so many formulas and they told me to stop changing the formula, but luckily we didn't listen and we ended up with the Similac Alimentium. It comes in a can in Canada. They have ready to feeds, which is the one we get, and he's a lot better. His stomach stopped cramping like that, and we were grateful because that was a really hard period. So that's what I mean when it comes to trusting your gut and doing what you think is right for your child, because you spend the most time with them. I definitely believe in vaccinations, but when it comes to these kinds of things, like something affecting their stomach, allergies they could be possibly allergic to, you likely know a bit more unless they're doing tests and stuff. But yeah, trust your gut. I remember asking my therapist in the beginning, especially that I knew that I was becoming a mom and I was pregnant with Ace. I was thinking really far in the future, like, how do I make sure I'm not an overbearing mother? And she was like, well, you don't have to think about that right now because obviously it hasn't even come out yet. So we just worked through my traumas basically. But yeah, I do worry about a lot of these things, especially in the future, like how am I going to be a good mom to him? And yeah, I think also with parenthood, social media can make it more difficult in certain ways. If you're comparing yourself to other parents, like you see other babies happy all the time, of course they cry, they just don't film that part, especially if they're not feeling well and they're just crying all the time. I feel like seeing perfect moms versus authentic moms who show both sides, the good and the bad, I think that could be really healing because it shows more reality, especially as a mom, because society expects you to do everything. You'll have to lean on your partner. And I told John before all this, if you're gonna have kids, make sure you talk to your partner and you lay out all the ground rules. I hate working 9 to 5. I'm just not someone who enjoys it. A lot of people don't, especially in the younger generation. They just feel like you have no freedom. I told John, if we're gonna have a baby, then I need you to be there. You're not gonna be like these other fathers who just go to work, come home, and that's it. I'm gonna need your help emotionally and physically. You're gonna be changing diapers, feeding him, burping him, putting him to sleep, just helping me. I'm really glad I did that and set expectations first, because now that we have Ace, John's been so helpful and he's doing his part, and that's so helpful to me as a mom because it releases the burden from being the only parent in the relationship, which is unfair to a lot of moms. But yeah, the burden shouldn't fall on the mom. And yeah, especially when postpartum is common, moms need all the support they can get from their partners. If it's mutual consent to have kids, then you're gonna need equal support from both sides. Honestly, I think that being a single parent, even though you're married, it's gonna hurt your relationship in long term, causing like a lot of resentment, and yeah, it's just not fun. And as a mom, you don't want to be running on empty, because then you're running on empty with your child and it gives you less time and empathy for your own kids, so that's not what we want. Going back to the studies, perfectionism actually activates the same neural pathways as anxiety disorder. Your brain literally can't tell the difference between a real threat and an imperfect presentation. Studies also show that people with fawn response trauma often have hyperactivity, where they attune to so much of other people's emotions they lose touch with their own. And when in perfectionism mode, the amygdala in your brain, it's basically sounding a low-level constant alarm beep, saying danger. If it's not perfect, something bad will happen. These patterns aren't necessarily bad. They do contain qualities that you might want. For example, perfectionism means you have close attention to detail. You have higher standards, dedication to work ethic, and with people pleasing, you have higher levels of empathy, conflict resolution, and you're more considerate. So the goal isn't to eliminate completely, but to transform from survival to conscious choices, healthy choices. Healthy versions of these survival strategies are these healthy coping mechanisms, which you can learn from your therapist. Adaptive perfectionism, high standards without self-punishment, not punishing yourself just because you didn't get straight A's or you didn't get that 100%. And attention to detail without paralysis, meaning that you still pay attention to details, but you're not gonna not do your project just because you think you're gonna make a mistake. Genuine compassion, considering others without self-sacrificing. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, the body keeps score. Trauma healing must include the body, not just the mind. With me specifically, I felt a lot of trauma, whether that's stress from work or in general. I felt it on my shoulders and neck. I was always very tense, so your body does keep score of your trauma. When you're thinking of the body, breath work, movement, mindfulness, these can really help and be healthy coping mechanisms for perfectionism and people pleasing. And you probably often hear you should treat yourself with the same kindness as you treat your own friends. Think of yourself as your own friend. And I think that's really helpful, because when you treat yourself with the same kindness that you do to other people, then it shows your brain and your nervous system that you want to change and you want to make positive change and have a positive relationship with yourself, and that you're important. Research consistently shows that self-compassion leads to greater emotional resilience, less anxiety and depression, more motivation to change, better relationships with others, increased life satisfaction, and self-compassion increases motivation and performance while decreasing anxiety and depression. Dr. Richard Schwartz, Internal Family Systems, says that we have different parts, including child parts, carrying earlier experiences, and protector parts, which are like the adults trying to keep us safe. And perfectionists and people-pleasing parts are also protector parts that try to keep us safe based on our past trauma. Healing involves acknowledging parts with gratitude, helping them understand you're safe now, giving them adult permission for different choices, comforting your child self. You can practice these good enough standards to combat your perfectionism. You can set timers for when you're editing. I usually edit my podcast episodes on Monday, and they're due on Tuesday mornings. That gives me a way to not overthink it and just hit publish. Learning that good enough is actually excellent. Most can't tell the difference between your 80% and your 100%. Only you can. Celebrate mistakes as data. When it comes to social media, sometimes a post might not do so well and you're like, why am I an idiot and why did I make that post? Instead of thinking that way, you can reframe it as, okay, I learned that other people may not resonate with this type of style or maybe this type of content, and maybe I should make something else. Or maybe you keep going and you just improve the way that you make your content, and one day you'll find your own tribe. So just viewing it as each mistake teaches us something about the process and boundaries. Keep a mistake journal, write down your mistake, and write down what you learned from it. That way it can show you the positive correlations between mistakes and what you've learned. And for people pleasing, start with small no's. This could be someone asking you what you want for dinner, and if you don't want it, you can practice saying no and offer an alternative. And yeah, you can't go from saying yes to everything to saying no to everything overnight. It takes time and practice. The more you practice saying no, the easier it becomes. Your nervous system needs to learn that saying no is safe, because in the past, saying no wasn't safe. So now that you're an adult and you're in charge of your own life, it is. So you can start with something small. No, I can't take that call right now. I'm busy. No, I don't want to go to that event. No, I can't help with that project this week. And each small no teaches yourself that you can survive with disappointing people, and it's okay. You're gonna have to learn how to sit with discomfort, that some people might be disappointed in you, and you might feel guilty or nervous, like something terrible is gonna happen. But the more you train yourself and see that everything's okay, the more you'll understand that it's okay to put yourself first. Discomfort is temporary, freedom is everlasting. Just remember that. Every day, try to ask for one small thing that you need, whether that's from a partner, from your family, or from your friends, and you'll be really grateful that you asked for help, because oftentimes people do want to help. And the key is to start seeing your needs as something that is valid and important and not a burden for other people. You can talk to your younger self. You can be like, hey, I know you had to learn to be perfect to be safe, but we're okay now. We don't need to be perfect anymore. And that's really freeing. The more you learn to be your authentic self and not people pleasing, the more likely you are to find people who appreciate who you really are. And I think that's just the zest of life. Just remember, every step that you take towards healing your own traumas doesn't just change your life, it changes your child's life, your family's life. Choose authenticity over perfection, because your child will learn that it's okay to be themselves and be loved as who they are. Set boundaries, which I'm still learning. It teaches your children their needs matter, and it's safe to take up space, which was very difficult for me. Many studies show that children often learn from parents. When your child sees that you're okay when you make a mistake, then they're gonna think it's okay too. So when you're not overly hard on yourself, calling yourself an idiot or stupid just because you're making a small mistake, your kids will learn that it's okay for them too. This is my invitation to you. If this resonated with you, try one small thing this week. Publish that blog that you've always wanted to write. Even if you don't think it's good enough, just try it and see what happens. You never know. Send an email without reading it a million times. Share an unfiltered photo. Choose one small boundary. Say no to something, to someone. It's important to remind yourself that you're worthy of love, not just because you're helpful or perfect, just because you're you. The takeaway message is that perfectionism and people pleasing were just there to protect you. You can thank them for their service, but they're not needed here anymore. You are allowed to be human. Thanks for listening to this episode. You can share this episode if you found this helpful. Leave a review. It helps other people find this podcast. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and other places at Thoughtful Advocate, and you can DM with your own questions or stories. I usually read the messages. Thank you for being here and doing the hard work, because this stuff is not easy. Breaking generational trauma is very difficult work. You're doing this for yourself, your family, and the future. Good on you. And you don't have to be perfect to be powerful. So today's sponsor is Kind Laundry. Just kidding, but I do have an affiliate code. Kind Laundry use natural ingredients, and it actually comes in these sheets. So much more useful than liquid laundry detergent, because that stuff gets messy. With Kind Laundry, you can bring this anywhere. It's literally in a box, pack in your suitcase, and it's that easy. You can get 10% off by using code ZeroWasteCute.